Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to completely reframe how you think about a nutrient you've probably been hearing about literally your entire life. Now, to kick things off, I've got a staggering statistic for you. Roughly 95% of Americans do not meet the recommended daily intake for fiber. I mean, 95%. That's almost everybody. Usually, when most of us hear the word fiber, we instantly picture, a boring, chalky drink or some bland digestive aid. Maybe something you only worry about when you get older, right? Well, today, we're putting those old stereotypes to bed. We're going to look at the hard data and see fiber for what it truly is, the essential architect of your gut health. It's not just plumbing. It is the master planner behind the scenes, dictating exactly how your body extracts energy, regulates immunity, and builds the very foundation of your daily wellness.
So if fiber is such a master architect, it begs a pretty massive question. Why is it so often referred to as the forgotten carbohydrate? It's kind of this fascinating paradox, really. Think about it. Carbohydrates are absolutely everywhere in our modern diets. We are practically swimming in them. And yet this specific complex carbohydrate, fiber, is consistently overlooked. Why is that? Well, it's mostly because we live in this era of ultra-processed convenience foods and hyper-focused macro diets. Over the last few decades, food manufacturing has systematically stripped fiber right out of our grains just to increase shelf life and make things taste a little sweeter. And on top of that, trendy low-carb and keto diets often inadvertently cut out high-fiber foods in their quest to eliminate sugars and starches. The result? Our biological foundation is literally being neglected. We're bringing plenty of quick-burning fuel to the construction site, in the form of simple sugars, but we are completely forgetting to bring the actual structural materials the architect needs to build anything lasting.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we can break down the architect's primary toolkit. Because to really understand fiber, you have to understand the difference between its two main forms, soluble and insoluble fiber. Think of these as two completely distinct but equally vital raw materials. Let's start with soluble fiber. You'll find this in foods like oats, beans, apples, and chia seeds. When soluble fiber hits your stomach, it dissolves in water to form this thick, gel-like substance. And this gel is incredible. It actually slows down digestion, which helps catch and clear out excess cholesterol, all while keeping your blood sugar nice and stable. On the flip side, we've got insoluble fiber, which is in things like celery, nuts, and the bran of whole grains. Now, insoluble fiber doesn't dissolve. Instead, it adds bulk. It acts a lot like an internal broom, just sweeping through your digestive tract and keeping everything moving efficiently. So while they function completely differently as they move through your system, they work in perfect tandem. They're the essential supplies that just absolutely have to be delivered every single day.
But an architect and a bunch of raw materials can't just build a foundation on their own, right? They need a crew. So let's zoom way in, down to the microscopic level. Enter the gut microbiome. While it's super helpful to think of this as your biological construction crew, the sheer scale of it is just mind-blowing. We are talking about tens of trillions of microorganisms living right there in your digestive tract. Actually, to put that in perspective, these bacterial cells outnumber your own human cells. You are, in a very real sense, more bacteria than human. But here's the catch, and it's a huge one. This massive workforce relies entirely on the fiber we just talked about to function properly. See, humans actually lack the enzymes to break down fiber ourselves. Instead, we pass it all the way down to the colon, where this microscopic crew gets to work through a process called fermentation. And if you don't feed them the complex structural carbohydrates they need, they simply cannot do their jobs. In fact, they'll literally start starving.
And this brilliantly illustrates the exact chain reaction that happens when you eat right. Let's actually slow down for a second and really look at this mechanism because the biological elegance here is truly awe-inspiring. Step 1. The dietary fiber you eat safely bypasses your small intestine and makes its way down to the colon, basically acting as a giant feast for that gut microbiome. Okay, step 2. The well-fed microbiome gets straight to work fermenting those fibers. And as they digest the fiber, they excrete waste products that are essentially liquid gold for our bodies. These are compounds called short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs. And the absolute superstar among these is a specific SCFA called butyrate. Which brings us to step 3. Butyrate and other SCFAs are absorbed into your system where they act as the primary energy source for the cells lining your colon. From there, they circulate throughout your whole body to actively reduce inflammation. It's just a perfect, self-sustaining loop of biology. You feed the bacteria and they pay rent by producing butyrate to keep you healthy.
Let's really anchor this concept, because this is definitely the why this matters moment of our whole explainer. Short-chain fatty acids equal energy, plus reduced inflammation.
By simply feeding your microbiome the fiber it craves. The direct biological output is a crucial drop in systemic inflammation and a huge surge in cellular energy. Think of systemic inflammation like having the fire alarms in your body constantly ringing in the background. It's exhausting, it causes major damage over time, and it totally distracts your immune system from dealing with real threats. But the butyrate produced from fiber, it acts like a master switch, turning off those false alarms and just calming the whole system down. So you aren't just aiding digestion here. You are literally fueling your body's ability to heal, repair, and power itself at a cellular level. It's an incredibly powerful exchange.
So the crucial point is what happens when you scale this microscopic construction project up to a macro level over months and years. You build a fortress. The research strongly, and I mean consistently, links high-fiber diets to a formidable defense against some of the most severe chronic diseases of our time. Let's look at insulin resistance for a second. Studies show that because SCFAs help regulate the specific hormones that control our blood sugar, eating a high-fiber diet directly prevents those massive glucose spikes, protecting your long-term metabolic foundation. Then there's the incredibly important reduced risk of colon cancer. And this isn't just a random correlation. Remember that butyrate we were just talking about? It actually maintains the integrity of your gut lining. It fortifies the barrier so that toxins and mutagens just can't penetrate your colon walls. A healthy, thick lining protects the very factory where this incredible microbiome crew lives and works. It is quite literally long-term disease prevention being built, reinforced, and maintained, meal by meal.
Which brings us to our final thought. Are you feeding the architect or letting the foundation crumble? It's a pretty stark reality to face. Because every single time you sit down to eat, you're making a deliberate choice for your microbiome. You now know that this forgotten carbohydrate is actually the master builder of your health. It's driving energy, lowering inflammation, and actively defending against chronic disease right down at the cellular level. So the next time you look down at your plate, realize you aren't just feeding yourself. You are deciding whether your microbiome goes to work or goes hungry. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I highly encourage you to take this knowledge, look really closely at your next meal, and start building a stronger foundation today.